Hi there, homeschooling supermoms and professional home educator. I am so excited to be with you today. My name is Susan Hale. I'm one of the administrators for your group. I am excited to be here with you today because I want to talk with you about something that's really, really important, and that's a self-care plan. So Devin and I titled our workshop this afternoon, how's your self-care plan going? We wanted to touch base with you on this because we care so much about our mamas, and we want to make sure that you're taking care of you. And we want you to understand what that means and what is meant by self-care. So I just kind of wanted to walk you through some self-care information and answer any questions that you might have. And feel free to drop us a note inside the comments area because we'll be happy to chat with you on that. And so to start this off, through my homeschooling journey, I'm wondering maybe if you're a lot like me, where I wanted to always be this homeschooling supermom, right? Can you relate to that? A homeschooling supermom, which is someone who wants to do it all and do it well. But as you and I both know, when it comes to being a homeschooling mom, well, we're busy moms. We have a lot on our plates, right? We have too much to do and way too little time to do it all in. But we have to find that little piece of time, just a little bit of time for self-care, right? So when we think of self-care, I want you to know that it doesn't have to be expensive or time-consuming. And we want to take you from feeling maybe like this to having those little bits of time that feel like this. So we want to take you away from a lot of that chaos, because sometimes do you feel like you're a manager of chaos, right? To having a little tranquility, a little peace of mind, and take you someplace like this. So you might be asking yourselves, what is self-care, right? So I went out there and I looked at a couple of different definitions of self-care. One of them is by Merriam-Webster, and that's care for oneself. Simple and easy. I also found some really detailed definitions of self-care, like any necessary human regulatory function which is under individual control, deliberate, and self-initiated. Self-care, right? But I also really happen to like this definition. And it's any activity that we do deliberately in order to take care of our mental health, our emotional health, and our physical health. I really like that one because when we talk about self-care, we're not talking about just one aspect of who we are. We're talking about a lot of different areas and components in our lives. So I want to kind of break this down even further. So I'm going to talk to you even more about the different components of self-care. But I wanted you to first understand exactly what self-care is. So why do we need self-care? Why is this important to us? Well, the reason we need self-care is that life is super busy, right? When you talk about being a homeschool mom, you're talking about we're managing a home life, not just for ourselves, but for our families as well, right? We are talking about homeschool activities. So we're talking about curriculum. We are talking about schoolwork assignments. We're talking about selecting the curriculum. We're talking about making sure our kids have the activities and information that they need and the education that we need to provide to them. In addition to that, anybody who has kids mostly are probably involved in extracurricular activities. For those of you who might have middle schoolers or high schoolers, you're probably also involved with volunteer service hours. So you've got extracurricular activities. Maybe there's karate or soccer or piano lessons or gymnastics. or in volunteer service hours, because a lot of us like to get those volunteer service hours in. It looks really great on that high school resume, but it's also good for us internally, spiritually, to help out others as well. So, man, we've got a ton going on, and it doesn't stop there, right? So, in addition to all these things, we also have to remember that we're family members, right? So, we're busy taking care of our families. We're busy taking care of all the things that need to be done as it relates to homeschooling. We're taking care of the household. And then we're also family members. We're parents. We have parents. We're their children. We need to interact with parents. We need to interact with siblings. And there might be extended family members that we're interacting with too. So we keep on going, right? There's lots going on in our lives. In fact, some people are even caregivers for their parents or other family members. And some, to add to the mix, well, they're even household income contributors. Tons of activities going on. So not just activities are going on, but guess what? Social media comes in here also. So you have social media, you have the news that's happening in the world, you have interaction on social media. There's just so much coming at us that life, you and I both know, is super, super busy. And with this busyness, well, it gives us a very little time for me, your self-care, your you time that you need. So I want to talk, before I give you some ideas of self-care, I want to talk about the benefits of self-care, because a lot of times people think, why in the world do I need self-care? When self-care is so important. And like I said, even if you can squeeze just a little bit of time out for self-care, it's super, super important. So some of those benefits as it relates to self-care, self-care can reduce our stress. That's a huge perk, isn't it? And maybe we have our stress under control, right? Because there's some of us that don't need to reduce our stress. They just need to maintain their stress levels. And I happen to be one of those that happen to need to reduce my stress level. I don't know if you can connect with me on that. But there's others that just need to manage their stress level so it doesn't increase. So it reduces your stress level. It helps you to manage your stress levels. It maintains and improves improves your mental health as well as your physical health, because if we don't take care of ourselves, our mental health or our stress levels can actually impact not just our mental health, but also our physical health, our physical well-being. So it's really important that we have that self-care in there. And self-care also boosts your self-esteem. It helps you to feel good about yourselves. It helps to give you more self-confidence. It gives you positive feelings towards others, positive feelings towards yourself, positive feelings to what's happening in life. It helps to build healthy relationships. And when we talk about healthy relationships, we're talking about not just healthy relationships with others, not just healthy relationships with our kids or our spouses or the people we interact with on a regular basis, but it also gives us a healthy relationship with ourselves. We want to make sure that we have those good vibes, those good feelings, that good relationship with who we are as an individual. And as I mentioned, when it comes to self-care, there's huge benefits to it. And I want you to recognize that without self-care, the lack of it, we can actually compromise our own health. So it's really, really important. And I also want you to know that self-care doesn't have to be expensive or time-consuming. The other thing that I want you to know is that when it comes to self-care, there's no one size fits all. So what works well for me when it comes to self-care may not necessarily be what somebody else finds as self-care. So there is not a one size fits all when it comes to self-care. So my question to you, and drop us a note inside the comments, what ideas do you do? What ideas can you share with us that you do when it comes to self-care? Now, I'm going to give you some ideas in just a minute, but I'm really curious to hear from you. What are your ideas as they relate to self-care? So like I said, drop us a note inside the comments. Uh, Again, this is all about helping one another out when it comes to self-care and information. We want to be resources for one another. Okay, so let's talk about those areas of self-care, because I mentioned to you that there's different areas of self-care. And so I want to talk to you about those because oftentimes people think maybe self-care is one area or the other, but really self-care really is a holistic thing. It looks at all the different aspects of our lives. So when we talk about self-care, one is physical exercise or healthy eating. So they group this under physical. So it doesn't, when I talk about physical, it doesn't always mean like a regimented exercise plan or a very strict nutrition diet. It just means keeping in mind your physical being. It can be proper rest or resting when it's needed. Healthy eating doesn't mean healthy eating all the time. It just means you can have those treats and things like that. Again, I'm going to go into all of this, but I wanted you to know that there's different categories, and one of them happens to be physical, your physical being and how you take care of your physical being. The other one is your mental health. And we're going to talk, like I said, we're going to talk about each of these different categories. We're going to break them down and give you some different ideas. But mental means how do you refresh your mind and renew your mind to help get the stress out? Read a book. Maybe it's to do some laughing, right? Because laughing is great to reduce our stress. What are some of the things that you do to help with your mental health? Then you have your emotional and spiritual side to you. How are you nurturing your emotional well-being, your spiritual well-being? Now, when I talk about spiritual well-being, it can be, if it can be worship, if you wish, it can be worship. But I'm talking, and I'm talking about worship, and I'm talking about nourishing the soul, your soul and who you are, your emotion. How do you take care of that? And like I said, I mentioned laughing for mental because it reduces stress. But also laughing can be great for your emotional and spiritual well-being also. And what you'll find as we go into these different categories, you'll find that one activity that we might do might encompass all these different areas or a couple of different areas. And then there's also your social well-being. Your social well-being is your interaction with others. You're socializing with others. It might be socializing with your own family. It might be socializing with a spouse, a parent, a sibling. How's your social health going on? What are you doing to nurture your social health? And boy, is that a challenging one right now with COVID going on, right? So I want to give you some ideas on that too. Plus, inside the post for this particular workshop, you're going to find, I think I put in like 3 different links to some different resource sites that give you some ideas that you could put on a self-care list. Because I know sometimes when I finally get those few moments to do some self-care, sometimes I'm like, okay, well, what do I do with myself? What do I do with this time? Where if you create a list of some different ideas, so when you have that little tiny break in life and you want to do some self-care in that small break in time, you'll have some ideas ready for you to act on. Okay, so these are some of the different areas when it comes to self-care. Now, the other thing when it comes to self-care that I really love, I'm a big fan of Stephen Covey and the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He's got a 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens, 7 Habits of all different kinds of things, but 7 Habits of Highly Effective Leaders. There's all these different books that Stephen Covey has written, and he talks about sharpen the saw. And really and truly, that's what we're talking about in your self-care plan. Sharpening the saw, taking care of you, refreshing and renewing who you are as a person. And he breaks it down and talks about 4 different categories. Some people have broken it down into 5 different categories, 4 or 5, whatever works for you. But I kind of just want to walk you through that, what that might look like. Because like I said, it doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be time consuming. And they really can be very simplistic, easy things for you to do. So I put them in these 4 different categories for you to take a look at. And I mentioned physical, and we've already talked about, eating healthy, right? Or eating. Sometimes as busy moms, we forget to eat, right? We're so busy doing other things for other people, we don't take care of ourselves and we don't eat. And it's important that you eat and as well as eating nutritiously. And but of course, we all need that treat every now and then, those brownies or whatever your sweet tooth might be, or maybe that salty snack that you want. But it's also sleeping and getting enough rest to take care of you. Because if you take care of you, you can better take care of others. Exercising, and I mentioned that earlier too, and I said it didn't have to be this really strict exercising plan. It could be something very simplistic. It could be something as easy as taking the dog for a walk, or taking the kids for a stroller walk, or going to the park and taking a walk there, or walking through the woods with your children. I mean, that right there, it can fall into all of so many different types of categories. Physical, because you're getting the exercise, but also there's something peaceful about taking a walk out in nature. So it kind of clears your mind, things like that. So some of these activities that you look at are not going to fall just in one specific category. Some of these activities will actually fall into multiple different categories. Because like I said, walking the dog can be a great thing. It can lift your spirits. So there's that emotional, spiritual type of nurturing. The walking of the dog can be physical exercise and things like that. So I want you to know that some of these things that we're going to mention can fall into multiple different categories. And I'm just kind of breaking them down into categories right now. You don't need to break them down into categories. I just kind of wanted you to understand that there are categories. There's more to you when it comes to self-care than just eating right, sleeping, and exercise. There's that mental health, your mind, your thinking, your knowledge, growing your knowledge, having a social life. Like I said, that's a tough one right now, right? And I'm going to talk about that. And that emotional and spiritual also. So in the physical area, some people, maybe it's as simple as taking vitamins. Maybe you haven't taken vitamins in the past and you decided you want to start taking vitamins. Some of you are into the essential oils, and maybe you want to try a new essential oil. Maybe you want to add lavender into your essential oils area and breathe in lavender for relaxation. Well, that's fine there, right there too. That's taking care of your physical being, but also it's relaxing yourself and maybe moving into that emotional, spiritual area. Also, it could roll into that mental area, the mind, the knowledge, and growing your knowledge because you're doing research on essential oils. So I want you to look at these things and go, yeah, that's great that these are these different categories. But I also want you to know exactly what self-care is. And it can truly be super, super fun. And I'm going to share more ideas. First, I'm going to take you through these categories, as I mentioned. So let's talk about mental, mind, and knowledge. This is where you want to grow your mind, right? This is where you want to take a new class or read a new book or try a new recipe. Maybe you want to do a book club online, especially right now with COVID, right? So a book club online, or try something new, a new hobby, do different things like that. Oh, I see where I wrote try something new twice. Sorry about that. Emotional and spiritual. Maybe, even reading a book can fall into your mental area where you're growing your mind and your knowledge, but also it can fall into emotional and spiritual because of the fact that maybe it's a book on quotes. Maybe you're reading an uplifting book. Maybe it takes you away from your current environment and lets you kind of take a vacation in your mind. So therefore, when we talk about reading a book, it applies to more than one of these categories. We can talk about journaling. Journaling is a great thing to kind of help take care of us. There's quiet coffee time or tea time. I don't know about your household, but sometimes in my household, that can be a little bit challenging sometimes. But when you have those few quiet moments, take advantage of them. What's your treat? Maybe it's not a coffee. Maybe it's not a tea. Maybe it's a soft drink. Things like that. And again, I want to make sure that I include worship in that emotional and spiritual. So not all of us, some of us are secular families, and that's a-okay too. So I want you to know it can be worship, but yet it doesn't always have to be worship. It can be other things that really help you internally and spiritually grow yourself and give yourself peace of mind and reducing your stress. As far as social goes, like I said, it's particularly challenging right now. Maybe you can do a Zoom meeting with family or friends. So there are still opportunities. And some of you haven't tried Zoom meetings yet, but they're very easy. Once you try it a couple of times, it's really very easy, and um, it's free. Zoom is free, so do keep that in mind. Yeah, Jennifer. Hey, Jennifer, I'm glad you're here. So Jennifer's adding all kinds of great information in. So yeah, Jennifer is wonderful about adding in information about self-care. She does a wonderful job with it, and she's giving you all kinds of ideas as it relates to uh, prior to COVID and hopefully post COVID, right? So hopefully that's going to go away and we can resume our normal lifestyle, but also ideas while COVID is going on. So Jennifer has put some wonderful comments in the video area. So make sure you check out what Jennifer has shared with us also. Um, Pop back over here for just a second. Take a class. Jennifer, I'm going to use you again. Jennifer teaches classes on outschooling. There's all different kinds of classes there. There's all different classes everywhere. Take a workshop inside of your free Facebook group, Homeschooling Supermoms or Professional Home Educator. Maybe it's a workshop on something that you haven't done any discovery on yet, and you want to learn a little bit more about it. So there's ways to do a workshop or take a class, and it doesn't cost any money because, like I said, they don't have to be time consuming, and they don't have to cost a lot of money. They can be really simplistic little things. And in the social, where you try something new, that right there, the hobby, the cooking, that can be a social interaction thing. You can do it on Zoom. You can do a physical class, but not only trying something new doesn't just apply here for social, but it also applies there for your mental growth, as well as your emotional and spiritual growth. And maybe you're having to walk to that class, so that could even apply to your physical well-being also. That self-care plan to hopefully encompass everything. And then, even with social, you could do message a friend. Maybe you haven't reached out to a friend in quite some time, and you want to message a different friend once a week, to just rekindle friendships and renew and refresh with those friendships. So I wanted to break them into categories, but I also want you to know that you don't have to break them into categories. It's just finding ways to take care of you. And as I mentioned to you, when it comes to taking care of you, there's no one size fits all when it comes to taking care of you. What works beautifully for me, maybe something completely different for you. Maybe that snacking on that brownie or that salty pretzel is not for you. Maybe it's something different. Maybe it's a sweet tea or something like that. So there's no one size fits all when it comes to self-care. So I want you to know that there's, like I said, different resources above the post. So you can kind of take a look at some different ideas. And as I mentioned, Jennifer's sharing some different ideas in the post area as well. So that, we're here to help one another and to give us new and fresh ideas on how we can take care of ourselves. So in other words, what you can do is, if you wanted to, just take a piece of paper and jot down different ideas of things that you might be able to do to apply to your self-care plan. The other thing is, if at all possible, try to schedule your self-care time. I know for a lot of us, that's easier said than done. But if you can schedule it, that would be great. So maybe there's times where your kids are doing certain activities, and while they're doing those activities, maybe you can have a few moments to read your favorite book or your favorite quote, or to journal, or to sip on that favorite cup of tea. So try to schedule it if possible, and if not, at least try to look at how life falls into place for you and see where you might be able to snag those little bits of time for you to have a little bit of self-care inside of your week. All right, so here again is my question. Jennifer's done a great job of sharing information, and I hope that you guys will share information too. Tell us, what do you do for self-care? We're all really curious and really tapping into one another for some ideas. And Jennifer has mentioned a lot of things in here. She's broken into different categories for you guys, and she's also sharing with you that Great Courses Plus is amazing. I'm just going to kind of share what Jennifer has written in here. She says she's taken a lot of these classes, and she's currently taking one on folk tales and fairy tales, and they have all different kinds of classes and all different kinds of subjects. So again, a great way for you to work with your self-care, growing your knowledge. Sometimes taking these classes take you away from life, and they're going to reduce your stress. Maybe you have the opportunity to interact with others and increase that socialization. So lots of different opportunities for you there. So again, drop us a note inside the comments area of the different things that you do when it comes to self-care. Because the whole idea behind this, behind self-care, is to give you peace of mind, to help you out with that. Because our goal, as Deb and I were chatting about doing a self-care workshop, this is where we want to get you. We want to give you that peace of mind, that relaxation, so that you feel like you are having a whirlpool inside of a coconut and having a great day. Just a few moments in your life, at least a few moments each week inside your homeschooling lives. So, how's your self-care plan? Make sure that you're taking good care of yourselves. We care about you very much. Devin and I have had many conversations about our mamas and how wonderful they are, and also how sometimes as mamas, we can get a lot of stress in our lives and we can forget to take care of ourselves. We're so busy taking care of others, but we really need to remember to also take care of us, because the more we take care of us, the more we can give of ourselves to others. Well, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. I've had a great time chatting with you about self-care plans, and any ideas that you have, feel free to drop us a note inside the comments area. Ideas for other workshops, we'd love to hear from you, and we look forward to connecting with you in the future. Please remember that Thursday at 7 p.m. of this week, we have another workshop coming up for you, and we hope that you'll join us for that. It's at 7 p.m. on Thursday Central Time, 7 p.m. Central, and we'll look forward to chatting with you then. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a really great day, and we'll look forward to seeing you very soon. Bye for now.